Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I'm your host, of course, Ril Dil Quinn, episode 882 of the Ril Dil podcast. And I have on the line, on the Zoom, a very, very special guest. This has been one of my, just frankly, just most anticipated podcasts, probably my most anticipated podcast of 2023. I would say that because I've been looking forward to this, considering my love for the show Snowfall and just the story of one Diara Jaye, who was on the line. Diara, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm like highly anticipated. I gotta have some good things to say right now.
Yeah, like when we connected, and I found out what you did and what you're currently doing, and also that combined with, again, my love for the show Snowfall. I was like, I had to make this happen. Like this has to happen because I like that show. Only a week removed from the series finale, I think will be something that people will be talking about for years to come. Diara is a writer, producer for FX, for the FX networks. She has done a host of other things as well. We'll certainly get into that. Just tell us about, before we get into Snowfall, we have plenty of time for that. Tell us about your journey into becoming, how one gets to where you're at, and how has that process been over the course of your life?
Yeah, for sure. I think even starting out, I've always been writing or in some form of entertainment. I did, acting and modeling and writing and all these different things. And then when I got to college, it was very much, I went into the television program and it was heavily news based, which news wasn't really my forte. I loved entertainment news, which was cool because I ended up getting an internship at E! News, and that was fun. But my first job out of school was actually at CNN. And, sometimes you have to go through things to learn what you like, but also what you don't like. And I had great experiences there, but I knew that I wanted to write on more scripted content, get more into that. And then from leaving CNN, I stayed within the parent company and went to Cartoon Network, which I had a great time. It really showed me how to own content and, pitch creative ideas. I think that I was able to express my creativity a little bit more within that network. And then, CNN to Cartoon Network. I did some freelancing in between, BET Awards. I worked on that, so I got some award show experience. I had a brief stint at Paternity Court, which was interesting. So I've definitely explored a lot of different avenues of television, but I love it. And now being at FX, I get to work on some really fun and fearless content that really makes me happy and really pushes my creativity. So it's definitely been a journey, but I've learned a lot, and I'm very, very proud of the stuff that I've been able to work on.
Yeah, FX has, like, we'll talk more about this. I mean, FX has just had a history of just doing some remarkable programming, original programming. I frankly believe that outside of HBO, there's not a network that has produced as many quality shows year after year after year other than FX, and it hasn't even been around that long, to be honest. So been, again, Snowfall is gone, but the next great show is basically just around the corner, or documentary. Talk about, you mentioned a couple of things there I found interesting. People talk about wanting to get into the business and how do you get into the business, and there's really no straight path into this industry, it seems like, and even with broadcasting as well and podcasting and things of that nature, is just kind of develop skills, and like you said, you'll figure out what you do like versus what you don't like.
Right.
What do you think that what do those experiences? What did your early experiences teach you? Especially with at CNN and some of these earlier jobs. What are some things that stood out that you learned about this business that continue to help you to the today?
Yeah, for sure. I think that each experience I've had has definitely, taught me valuable skills that I've taken into other jobs. I think of my first, I actually did while I was in school, I did a work study program and I was at PBS. And they're like affiliate there. And one of my first jobs, I had to like caption and like transcribe like every show. And not only did it improve my typing skills, of course, but even to this day, there's sometimes like scripts that you have to transcribe and different stuff. So I think I look back to even that where it was like that felt so tedious and like so non-important. But, you know, through each thing that you're doing, even for people who want to get into the industry and you may not have a direct job into the industry just yet, I think it's important to recognize that you're building skills. I mean, people skills is a big part of television, and just in this industry. It's not, like you said before, there's no one path. It's not like, oh, okay, well, I got this job, so that means next I just got to be promoted to this. Like, it's very, I don't know, it's just, I don't want to say by chance or anything like that, but it's, there is no direct path and like there are in some other careers. So that can be very frustrating for some people, but I find it very exciting. It's like you can go in so many different ways and there's so many different careers within TV, but I think that those foundational skills can be brought up within any kind of job.
So I'm looking at like when I'm doing my research on you and just your journey here with some of the experiences that you had as far as jobs and skills. I was in awe because I was like writer, producer, contract negotiator, project
Mm-hmm.
management, video photographer,
Mm-hmm.
proofreading. That's a lot of hats over the course of over the course of even of a lifetime, let alone out. How long have you over a decade or so? Do you Was this the ultimate plan to like was this your ultimate plan to have to accumulate these all these skills to so you can get to this point, or was this something that just kind of like, all right, I developed this relationship, I developed this particular skill, this has led to that led to this.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm naturally very curious. And so it's sometimes like if something piques my interest, like um, I learned how to edit and stuff. And that's something that like I don't really edit, but I'm like, I know how to. And, that's not necessarily my strength, or my, biggest thing that I work on, but it's also like a skill that it's like, okay, if I need to, I can go back to that. So I just always think that it's important to develop a lot of different skills. And I think also in school and then within my first job, it was all surrounded by news. And there's the term of like one man band. And within people within like local news, they're having to oftentimes write, shoot, edit, do all these different things. So I was kind of trained to kind of have that mentality of like, you need to know how to do it all, which I'm very grateful for. So I think it kind of naturally made me want to pick up a bunch of different skills. So it's like sometimes, you get into jobs and it's like you don't have to do it. You don't have to know how to do all of this stuff. But I think that it is good because you never know when those skills might transfer or be helpful. So I just think that being in that mentality of like being taught to know how to do it all or explore different interests really helped. I think I'm also not afraid to like ask questions about something or ask people what they do. You'd be surprised, like people like talking about what they do. So sometimes in different departments, like I'll work with editors or, sound mixers and stuff. So I'm kind of like, oh, well, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? It's not necessarily something that it's like, okay, well, I'm going to develop this skill, but to even have like a foundational background or some kind of knowledge on that, I think that that's important. And it also allows me to do my job better. Because if I find ways to know how a person is doing their job, I know where I can step in and help that person, and we can work to be able to collaborate and have better teamwork together.
What are some of the challenges you face as a black woman in Hollywood in this space?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, uh, sometimes, let's see how I can how I can say. I think for the most part, I haven't had too much where it's just like um outright bad experiences or anything, but I think naturally there comes from just, you know, being black within this industry all along. We're often underestimated, and it is a thing where you have to work really hard to make your voice heard or to make sure that your stories or the things that you write are, vocalized and stuff. I think that that has been a personal journey for me as well, to just like, speak up about things and like use my voice. I think as Black people within corporations and various industries, we're kind of felt like we need to kind of blend in and not be too loud or too outspoken. We kind of need to, fit within the foundations of whatever the corporate or landscape is and that kind of thing. And I think um, now we're in an exciting time where it's kind of like we can speak up and we can use our voice and be bold. And I think that that's been an interesting journey for me. But it is like, you look on, for instance, for content, we have great stories that are outside of slavery or trauma. And that seems to be what is often requested and what wins awards. Like, I know we're going to get into Snowfall later, but, that's not an Emmy Award winning show. Should it be? Probably should, but it's not what, is always highlighted and that kind of thing. I think that there's definitely within Hollywood, I talk to other writers or other people, and it kind of is like, I have this great content, but, it seems like only stuff about slavery or Black people within traumatic times is what wins awards. Also, Insecure had like a really great run, very influential to the landscape of television and Black stories. And, it didn't get the recognition that I feel and a lot of people feel that it deserves. So it's just getting over that boundary or kind of that mentality where we're just like, just put out, work your hardest for what you can. And you almost can't focus on the recognition. But I think that recognition within our community is just as important. We don't need it. It's nice to have awards and stuff, but it kind of sometimes it sucks because it is kind of like, I can put out this story, but will it get the recognition that it deserves?
Yeah, I've seen that through the course of my lifetime, just watching. I'm not an awards person myself. I could care less about the Oscars. There was a time I watched all those shows, the Golden Globes, the Oscars. The only one I really even pay attention to is the Screen Actor Guild, the SAG Awards, because those are people's peers actually voting, and that seems to be more. There's I think that I have more respect for that because you're being judged by your own peers and being voted by your own peers specifically. But for the most part, I just can't even like the Grammys. The awards is so much politics. It's so like to your point about Denzel wins his first Best Actor Oscar for playing a dirty cop. Like great performance, no tremendous performance is Denzel. But come on, like Malcolm X, like so there been the tens upon 10, like 30 performances that Denzel's given that were that were better quality as far as the type of content and the type of roles. But that just, to your point, that's just how the game is. It's like slavery, trauma, things of
Mm-hmm.
that nature is frustrating for me, as somebody who consumes content, as a black man, to see the black actors and actresses and content creators not get the recognition that they deserve. So I just say basically to myself, the hell with the awards. I just don't care about them. That's kind of like
Right.
my protest to them, because I know quality when I see quality. Like I think The
Mm-hmm.
Wire is the greatest show ever. It never
Right.
got one Golden Emmy nomination, one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's frustrating. I can understand. I totally understand. Even though we don't do the same thing, but I get what you're saying from that. How frustrating that can be in terms of the recognition, and because in being in your position, like these awards, I may not care about the awards, but an Emmy nomination for a show like Snowfall, that could be, that's doors opening up for writers, producers, if you just for a nomination, let alone winning. So
Right.
it is a big deal from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it's it's getting better. I mean, we have like, Abbott Elementary. I think that that's been good. Or
Right,
even, when Atlanta started really pushing out on the forefront. And that was exciting because that was like a bold story. It wasn't like some cookie cutter show. It addressed some real issues. So that was an exciting time. So, you know, I think that it's always good to remain hopeful, but it is like, I'll go back to Insecure. There's no argument within our community how influential that show was
right.
recently. Um, and, after a while, sometimes you're like, okay, it doesn't even matter. It matters more. I think you have to know what your intent is. I think for the most part, writers and people within this industry, yes, awards are nice, but we're not doing it to just, put, awards on our shelves and stuff like that. That helps definitely to build a brand and, for more money, but you want that story told. You don't spend so much time working on a show that you don't have, a lot of passion for. So I think that it's more important about, the people. I think the interactions, like I've enjoyed how much people have enjoyed Snowfall and have looked at it, and the discussions and stuff, that's just as valuable. So um I think it's just, shaping the mentality and really looking at things not about awards, about, because you have to also think about like who's voting. It's like I didn't necessarily make the show for you, so maybe you don't necessarily understand it. But yeah, it's a journey. But I am very hopeful that our stories start being at the landscape of like the forefront and as influential as they are, and that being recognized.
There are a number of just talented black women right now that are killing the game as far as
Mm-hmm.
just producing content creation. I mean, Ava DuVernay, Issa Rae, um,
Mm-hmm.
like
Robin Thede, she's doing well, and yeah, it's a lot of people.
even going to podcasting like a Jamel Hill with what she's doing, and basically
Mm-hmm.
create her own network with the Unbothered Network and put other black women on. And which I love to see it. What do you think that it? How have you benefited from this seemingly just kind of like outpouring of just so many quality women in the business doing what they're doing and doing it at an extremely high level?
Mm-hmm. I think it's very inspirational. I think, you know, the topic in a lot of different avenues is just representation right now. And I think that, no matter what industry you're in, when you see it being done as like when it's possible, that's very inspiring. So right now I'm in a time that I have so many examples of like, okay, this is possible to do, which is very encouraging. And they're paving the way. I think that um, there's it's an exciting time. I think that Black women are definitely getting what they deserve and the recognition and being able to pave and open doors for others behind them. I think that that's an important thing as well. I think each one of those women have someone that's coming behind them that they've helped get through the door, either directly or indirectly. So um, I'm very proud and excited for future opportunities and seeing more people come out.
There's before we get to Snowfall, there's so much content coming out now, more content than ever before. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's streaming service upon streaming service. Everybody has a podcast. Uh, everybody has a show.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the challenge of separating the great content from just the regular content for you as someone who's as a producer, as someone who has to making decisions on, hey, is this a good story to tell, or maybe we need to stay away from that. We'll talk about those challenges when the consumers are saying we want more content. We want more content. I think a lot of times, what I've seen and what I noticed, because I'm a very picky watcher. I don't just watch anything for the most part. I got a couple guilty pleasure television
Yeah.
shows.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I'm very picky in terms of the type of content that I'm consuming because it just has to be quality. But people want content no matter what, it
Mm-hmm.
is. So how is that challenging for you? Because I'm sure you have a high standard of what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, what stories want to be told, what stories should be told.
Mm-hmm. Um, I think yes, for sure. There is so much content, so many different platforms that you can watch content on. I think that it's an exciting opportunity for people to be able to have ownership and be able to make their own content. I think before we had like YouTube and, different social media and stuff, it was kind of like you needed it in to be able to kind of have a platform for your content to live on. And now you can build a fan base off of, recording or shooting stuff from your phone. And I think that that's really exciting and it gives content creators a lot of opportunity, especially going back to, Black creators. I think that when they don't have an industry connect, they're able to kind of highlight their own work that they're doing. And even if it's not about how many people are watching it, they have something to show for it so that when they are trying to, build those skills or just being able to do it and say that they did it. But yes, there is a lot of content. I think that it's also subjective. I think that there are some shows that I look at and I'm like, how is this still on the air? Like,
Right.
it just keeps getting renewed. And then there's some shows that I'm like, they really canceled that. So it's all about like preference. And a lot of times with shows, you can have a consensus like, okay, this is going to be a very successful show. But you don't necessarily know until it comes out and what people are wanting. Right now there's shows on the air that are doing really well and they've kind of become the standard of like when you're pitching shows like, oh, we need something like this, and now we're on this trend where we want an ensemble cast rather than just focused on one individual character. Like we want something with multiple characters that we can follow their stories. And that can be the way right now. You start writing something for that, but by a year or so, or when you're ready to shoot something, it can be a whole different trend or a whole different kind of stories that are wanted. So it's definitely a journey. It's just, you don't know until you know sometimes. There's always a discussion about like FX, about how they passed up on Breaking Bad because they didn't think it would be successful.
Right.
And now that's just like, a legendary show and, highly referenced show. So it's like, sometimes you have those moments and that kind of thing. And then sometimes you have shows that you think will do really well. They don't, or they do. it's just really all subjective. I do think that streaming has also opened up platforms for people to be able to watch network shows, but on like a streaming platform at their at their leisure. Like for instance, when Snowfall got onto Hulu in season 3, it kind of had a big spike, and that kind of it opened it up for a lot more people, and a lot more people started watching it. I think social media has also helped with different shows, just being able to have tweets and conversations. The amount of shows that I've even discovered from people like just posting something on social media, and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to check this show out. So, yeah, it's like your own mini promotion sometimes for shows. Sometimes shows don't do well until they get into a couple different seasons, or they might have a spike. So it kind of just depends, but there is definitely a lot of content right now, for sure.
No, no question about it. And that's a perfect segue to Snowfall. So I was on Snowfall from season one, from
Mm-hmm.
episode one. Like as soon as I heard about the story and saw the trailers, what have you, I was like, I'm in. I'm on. Like,
Yeah.
because I've never seen this story told about the crack epidemic in the 80s and the Reagan era. I've never seen it told like this, especially with a predominantly African American cast.
Right.
Um, didn't know any of the actors, uh,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of Mon Joseph. The only reason I knew who Mon Joseph was because I actually used to watch that show on Cinemax called Zane Diary. He was on one of the stars on the Zane Diaries. I don't know if you ever seen that
Oh.
show. Yeah, he was
Mm-hmm.
on. He was on there about 10 years ago. So I recognized his face, but everybody else I had no idea who they were in terms of the main cast and even some of the recurring characters. So I said, okay, this has some wire potential as far from that standpoint. Fresh cast, new story, the story that hadn't been told yet. Um, did you know from the inception that it would get to this level, or what were your initial thoughts about the show when it first started back in 2017?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't at FX first for season 1, but I loved the show. Like you, I watched it from, season 1, episode 1. And I remember I would always tell people, like, you gotta watch this show. Like, it's so good. It's so good. So even fast forward to seasons later, I didn't expect to be working with the show. It's just one of those full circle moments that made me really happy. But yeah, it was just, I think during that time, it was something different. I mean, a show from John Singleton, you expect it to be good. I think that, he has great classics. And then um, just seeing that perspective, yeah, it was like a show that had a unique story. So I think that it is important that it did become um, like a big show, as big as it is, for sure.
So you talk about Hulu. Um, the, they streamed the episodes the day after on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've heard interviews where there was talk, and again, similar to The Wire, that there was talk that it was basically season by season for the first 3 seasons. Like they didn't know that it was going to return. It was touch and go. Um, do you think Hulu saved the show from that standpoint with the popularity of it?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you repeat that question, please?
So the first 3 seasons, based off some of the interviews and some of the things I've read, it was touch and go whether or not they would return for the following season.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you think that the streaming of the show the day after on Hulu, in essence, might have saved the show?
Um, I think, yeah. I mean, I still wasn't at FX when it came on to Hulu the first time in season 3, but I could imagine so. I think that when you're looking at viewership, that's the main thing that tells you how successful a show is. I think streaming metrics were a little bit um, maybe possibly easier to track, and it gave it an opening for more people to be familiar with that show and to, open the Hulu app or, on their TVs and stuff. And it's like a suggested show that could pop up. And they have that where it's just, whether as when you're tuning in for a specific time to watch a show, streaming kind of has that opportunity to explore other shows that might be recommended or on the network. So I definitely think that it increased the viewership for sure.
So the show covered, like, to me, checked all the boxes from a standpoint of, number one, the writing was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
You had compelling characters, and you have a lead character that, you know, just evolved from this kind of like this 23-year-old in real life to now. I know he's 31. He started Damson Idris started Snowfall when he was 23, but
Mm-hmm.
his evolution as we kind of got to watch him grow up as a young adult actor from season one up until now. Um, I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. I've seen anything like it from a. We look at the protagonists in other shows, like you look at Tony Soprano, you look at Mad Men with Don Draper, you look at even Brian Cranston in Breaking Bad. Those
Mm-hmm.
were all seasoned actors when they took over those roles. They were all seasoned, well into their 40s, late 30s, early 40s, and had been bounced around, especially Bryan Cranston. He had been all over the place. But he was like 20, 25 years in before Breaking Bad started, or at least 20 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to see someone that young take on this character and just seemingly just morph into what it became. Talk about the performance of Damson Idris, and again, did you like what did you in terms of what did you see with the character of Franklin Saint?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely evolved. I think um, I always hear about, and he'll talk about the things that he did coming to America and to LA and preparing for this role, auditioning for it, even, studying the accent, kind of getting familiar with the city of LA. He definitely did his due diligence to study and morph into Franklin. I think that he worked hard for that role for sure. And then even starting out in season one, he's playing this student, walking around with, his backpack and morphing into the drug dealer and then, a boss, and even watching recently into his downfall. It's definitely been an amazing performance. I think that it's definitely something that is admirable and should be definitely recognized. And he's so humble about it as well, but he definitely brought Franklin to life. And I think that he should be very proud of his performance for sure.
What was it like working, like just watching the show again? You got a chance to you kind of got on it at season two. What year did you get the FX?
Um, I'm like, what year is it now?
Yeah.
2021.
Okay, 2021.
Yeah, so
So
the
that's
last two seasons. Mm-hmm.
I just wonder, just working with some of the writers, working with some of the producers, and working with, like, I just wonder what was like that the whole Snowfall experience like for you, and what did you learn from it as in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think I've learned so much about um I think just the craft of television through this show. Honestly, it's definitely been one of my favorite shows to work on. I think that especially because it was one of those shows that before I got to FX that I was like, I love this show. I think even in my interviews and like going into the job, they were kind of like, what shows you on? And when I was just talking about Snowfall, and I'm like, I've been promoting Snowfall since like season 1, telling people to watch it. I think between um, being able to work with the content, seeing the stories, the scripts, I think that it's taught me so much. I think that it's taught me about the kind of show and community I'd like to create for myself and for others. I would love to have a show that has such an impact and that people enjoy and can relate to these characters. You don't have to have ever been a drug dealer to relate to Franklin. You can relate to his sacrifice, his hard work, his, wanting to protect the people that he loves. I think that that's it's just an all around great story. I think that it has just taught me so much and encouraged and developed my writing. I think that I love watching just different scenes that they've done from like the camera work. I think it's so inspiring for that. I was watching a clip because I love watching how people are just like posting just different things throughout the seasons lately about Snowfall, because it's a sad thing that the show has come to an end. So I think a lot of people are kind of reminiscing right now, and just seeing the clips, I'm like, of how it's always been a great show from season 1, but just to see how it's evolved, or just those little details that are within the show that really have come full circle or give a little bit more depth to the feel of the show. It's really been an amazing journey for sure.
This season again, and one day I will rank the seasons. I'm not even ready to rank the seasons right now because it's too fresh in
Yeah.
my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Though I do love season 3 with the Andre versus Franklin. That was that I just that and I was just shocked when Franklin. Spoiler alert: when Franklin killed him. So
Yeah.
season three kind of stands out, but even still, I would have to really do a complete rewatch again to
Yeah.
like fully rank the seasons. But what I did notice in this last season was because I started doing podcasts on about the show in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
It jumped out to me. I would always rewatch the episode twice. The last 3 seasons, I rewatched each episode multiple times in preparing for the podcast. Every time I will watch on the rewatch, in particular this season, there will be a bunch of other things that will come out on the second watch versus the first watch.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's brilliant. I keep references this show, The Wire, because that's what to me what used to happen with The Wire. Like there was so much stuff going on, and it was such a nuanced show that there was no way to get everything in the first viewing. Like you had to watch it multiple times and catch this and that in terms of certain scenes. Even this one particular scene jumps out when Sissy's in jail and he's trying to get the house from her because he's desperate at this point. He has nothing. Veronique took all his money, what have you, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
There's a halo that's around her. And I was like, and somebody mentioned it during the article. I was like, I didn't even see it the first time. And then the second time I noticed, like, there was a halo. I was like, what? I was like, my goodness. I like that. That's just next level. Like, that's just next level writing. That I assumed I could be dead wrong, but the halo was in reference to when Louis called him the devil. So I guess she was supposed to be at that point maybe even a godlike figure versus where he's at. So maybe I could be reaching, but that was my interpretation of that particular scene. But just things like that,
Mm-hmm.
the season jumped out in terms of just how layered the writing, the writing was for this last season.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the writers and for really any show, I'm like, I think the more writers and directors can work together and really like paint that full picture. I think it's the teamwork and the chemistry for that is so important, and then it's able to translate over to the actors. And you can, I'm hoping that everyone can tell just how much of a family the cast and crew of Snowfall were and are. I think that especially within these last couple seasons, there was a mission to really honor John Singleton's legacy. And so, you want to honor that by giving the best work and really putting the energy and the quality into it. But yes, it is. There's a lot of different details, and I love within FX. I'm like, the fan base is so strong for like a lot of the shows, even outside of Snowfall. So it's always interesting to see the theories that come out from even just like teasers or before the episodes have even gone, or just like the discourse about the different shows. So we definitely love seeing that.
Yeah, they were there. Yeah, the Snowfall Reddit is hilarious. It's if you want to laugh, Snowfall Reddit is it's the fans are. I mean, the fans are so into it. Like you have some. Definitely developed a cult like following with the fan base on a lot of these social network platforms, especially Reddit, and also I started following their Twitter. Some Twitter handles on about Snowfall in particular. So there's with the show being gone now, of course there were already some talks. Well, first of all, did you how it ended? Do you think that was? And I know this might be an impossible question to answer because it's hypothetical, but do you think it ended the way John Singleton would have wanted it to end based on his vision for like how the first 3 seasons went?
Yeah, I really don't know. I feel like because the fans are satisfied and feel like it was a good ending for the most part, I think that can make, him happy. But, unfortunately, like I can't say that I knew him or, had any insight into the direction that he felt the show should go. But I'm hoping that he's happy with how it went. I think, there were a couple of different ways that Franklin's character could have ended. I think the speculation, it was always like, how is he going to get his money back? Will he die? Will he get away with it? Those kind of different things. But I think that the ending became pretty realistic for it because, yeah, it's the rise and the fall. So seeing him like that, it definitely broke my heart. I'm like being attached to the character. I'm like, I wanted him to just have the money and ride off into the sunset. But I don't think people would have been as happy with that ending because they wouldn't have felt that it was as realistic for him to just get away with the money untouched, not in jail, not dead. I think that was the ending, and it kind of probably touched on our hearts a little bit more to see him like that. We have seen Franklin so powerful for so long, and to see him like that, even how, from the view of Leon, when you're watching that scene and how Leon's looking at him, I think that the ending was the best ending that could have taken place. So I am hoping that, John is looking down and pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I don't think that they could have did a better job in terms of the ending. Killing him to me would have been a cop out. We've seen going to jail. We've seen the jail. We've seen that with drug dealers. And well, again, most of them being realistic. Most of them end up dead in jail. So it's not like had they chose to end it that way, that would have been something that is not, that doesn't happen. We know how normally how that story turns out. But I think that considering who this character was, and considering that who he hated the most, for him to go out like Alton, or
Mm-hmm.
even worse
Yeah.
than Alton, because for him to become Alton, the version of Alton that was the alcoholic and was on the streets, I thought it was, you couldn't have a better ending, because he
Yeah.
despised Alton. He
Yep.
despised everything about his father,
Yeah.
and
He
he
became
actually
everything.
became him. And I think he actually became worse, because at least Alton got himself cleaned up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll clean himself up. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, the smart money ain't on Franklin. That's a lot of
Right.
pride. A lot of pride. He was. I like it. I loved the character. I loved how it ended from a standpoint. Even with everything he had done, that gone through, he still was on that. Wasn't my fault. I'm not taking this responsibility. Can you
Yeah.
believe Veronique? He still was on that. He still was on that, and it was a perfect song to end the show in terms of pride and Kendrick Lamar, because that's what he was on that to a T.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and still thinking that he was way more important than he was, in terms of with the CIA. It's like, dude, they're not checking for you anymore. It's like they've moved on. Um, but again, I wonder how this show, to the culture, we know from a culture standpoint that this show is going to be remembered forever. Like the culture, the culture loves this show. But I wonder, in terms of from a historic perspective in television, how well this show will be remembered, in terms of with the legacy. What are your thoughts on the legacy of this show ultimately?
Um, the legacy of the show, I feel like I'm hoping that it's just, well, I feel like it already has been. It's labeled as a good show. I hope people go back and watch it from the beginning. There are some people who now are saying that they want to watch it. I'm like, you've seen all the spoilers now, but hopefully they still go back and watch it and enjoy it. Um, but yeah, I think that the legacy of the show for Snowfall, that it can be, we got to see a black, outside of the demise and like everything that he was doing, but he was a black man who did what he needed to do to become a boss. And I'm not, you know, encouraging his methods in particular, but we got to
Right,
see someone who kind of went after his own kind of destiny, and he was a strong character and was able to give a new perspective for his character and what it meant to be a black man. I think that it was beautiful in the aspect that the show, it explored power, it explored trauma, but like not in a pity me way, but it also highlighted, which was so bold, but just highlighted the circumstances that black people who have been put in because of society and because of the things that have on in the government and that kind of thing. I think that it's a show that has legacy within itself because, like we're saying that Franklin became Alton, like, that's legacy in itself. He worked so hard to take care of his mom, and we saw just how it ended. And I think the hope is just that, people are able to have a new perspective on life, learn something, connect with these characters, see themselves in characters. I think that that's always important for legacy.
yeah, I think that it told an important story about the real America. Like, you I one of the things that stands out about a truly great piece of art is what, like, are you going to go do some research on it? Are you going to go read a book about it, get more information?
Mhm.
Are you curious about um, where they got some of their information from? So I think that's where the show really nailed it. Like, I want to know more about
Right.
the '80s cracker epidemic, and one of the scenes in season two, a homeless lady was like, "Reagan's a liar. Reagan's a liar." Like, okay,
Mhm.
well, what for a younger generation, why there's this perception that Ronald Reagan was this great president, but we know the truth in terms of some of the things that he inflicted on this with this country, and had the Alzheimer's and stuff. So, what about that? Like, what? How did he contribute to this epidemic and the plight of systematic racism? So, it touched on a lot of things that are extremely can be extremely uncomfortable for society. And with that being said, I wonder, will we see shows, more shows? Will it spawn more shows like that? Because and there were entertaining aspects of Snowfall. It had some comedy at times and what have you, but for the most part, it was a very gritty show, and it held a mirror to the face of this country, and that's not always. And again, The Wire had to find this out the hard way as far as race and things that nature. That's not always going to be well received in this country, as we all know.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I think it is that because a lot of people before Snowfall came out didn't know that that was a real thing. How real that story was. There were different characters that the could have been loosely based off of certain people or based, but that that experience, the CIA, and it really happened. And for some of us who we didn't live that, we weren't in that era, or for people who might have been in that era but weren't in Los Angeles, that's a whole different culture and that kind of thing. But yeah, the crack epidemic, that's it, it's very interesting that I think from season one, even I remember we were like, it's interesting that there's even a show like this, that they're allowed to put this on air, like allowed to expose this. It was very bold and something that we hadn't seen. um I also look into like another show that I felt like was kind of going into exposing different things was Lovecraft Country.
Oh
And I
yes, and
loved
one
that
season,
show.
yeah, I love a great show. Great, I mean,
Yeah.
great show.
Yeah. It was, an amazing show, but, we won't get a season two kind of thing. So I think that the fact that Snowfall was able to live in a truth and continue that and tell the full story and end it when they were ready to end it, I think that that's so powerful and so important.
Now, there's always, before I let you go, there's already been talk that it leaked out a couple of
Mm-hmm.
weeks back about spinoffs. Gail Bean is already rumored to be on, who of course plays Wanda. Was
Mm-hmm.
already, and by the way, I'm so happy that she had a relatively happy ending. One of the few characters that had a happy ending. I guess we want to put her in also,
Mm-hmm.
in that category. But anything about the spinoffs that do you have any connections with the spinoffs, or are you going to be a part of it, or is it too early in terms of from that standpoint?
It's too early for, you know, my anything of like me being involved in it. But I'm hoping that it does happen. I would love Gail Bean is amazing. She's very just so humble, but so talented and so sweet. Um, I think that I would love to see her star in her spinoff and to see her story being told and that kind of thing. I'm always for Black women in lead roles, so yeah, I'm all for it. I know there's been conversations about it, but I don't know too much about it. But I'm hoping that it does happen for her.
Well, to give the audience something, the rumors are and this again, I could be dead wrong, and this is just speculation and innuendo that it's going to explore the '90s, the hip hop era. Her character, at the end of Snowfall said that she wanted to do music, so which would make sense because like that's the '90s is when hip hop really just went to another level. Hip hop, R&B in particular, but especially hip hop. You had NWA. Well, not really not NWA. That was I wouldn't say NWA. They were more '80s, but even just hip hop. You talk about Dr. Dre and
Yeah.
Snoop and then West Coast, that whole era. So really, I mean, the '90s was a defining era of hip hop. So it would make sense if they went that direction, and then turned into the crack epidemic as well continue with drugs and things of that nature. And still, of course, drugs to this day. But I like there's some definitely some story to tell moving forward from the Snowfall, with the spinoff. So I'll be intrigued to see what they do with that, even though it's like to your point, very very early in terms of production and things of that nature, and even wondering about what it's going to be about. But
Yeah.
go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I'm just saying, yeah, there's been conversations about it and that kind of thing, but yeah, it is in like it would be with development if it is something that's happening and stuff. So I don't have too many details, but I'm not always the biggest fan of spinoffs, but I'm rooting for Gail Bean and I love the show. So as long as it's going to be good, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think we have to temper expectations from the standpoint of like I don't immediately say, all right, this is Snowfall 2 or whatever. This is going to be. I just don't expect. I don't expect it to be Snowfall. If it's
Yeah,
quality, long as the work, the content is quality, I'm good with it. But I'm not going into it with that type of expectation. I think that's just unrealistic. Like this is Snowfall is a generational thing, a generational show, and like you're not. Yeah, those don't come along that often. They just don't. From that standpoint, but I'm very. There's a story to be told though about the hip hop '90s era and even like I said, the crack epidemic and things of that nature, and how hip hop had hip hop on culture, and especially and it makes sense with it being the 50th anniversary of hip hop as well. Even though it won't come
mm-hmm.
out, even though I'm assuming that it's not going to come out in 2023, but just even we're upon that this year. But let's say even if it came out like next year or 2025, but there's some story to be told there. So
For sure.
uh, I will be definitely looking forward to it. But again, thank you giving us a long time, and I appreciate it. And I definitely will look forward to having you back on the program to discuss even more about the FX and things of that nature that be coming up in the world of television. We definitely appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun and it's given me a little closure on Snowfall. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. You take it easy.
Take good care. Okay, bye.
Right. That, of course, was Diara Jaye, Diara Jaye of FX. Definitely thank her for coming on the program. And I'm gonna do a Snowfall. I'm gonna do a rewatch for seasons 1 through 3 in terms of podcasts. It just would be foolish for me not to do the last 3 seasons and not do the first 3 seasons. And I will have a whole different perspective on it considering I've watched the entire series. So that's gonna be coming up later in the summer. For me to do that rewatch, I like that because that would just be foolish for me not to do so. So. But that's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I will see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.